After 15 years of dominance by U.S. markets, something has unexpectedly happened in the first 2 months of 2025. European and emerging markets suddenly began outperforming, with China leading the charge. So is this just a hiccup, or is it the beginning of a major shift in global market leadership? We're going to break that all down for you and much more right now on UBS Trending. Hi, everybody, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastore. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. I'm back in the studio with Alejo Cherwanko, Chief Investment Officer for Emerging Markets here at UBS. Alejo, always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I really gave a big tease to the audience about what we're going to be talking about today, specifically in the world of emerging markets. But my gosh, it is interesting to see after so many years of dominant performance by U.S. markets, it looks like on the emerging and international side, things are starting to really pick up. I guess the first question would be why? What's happening?
You're absolutely right, Anthony. If you look at the last 15 years of history, U.S. stocks generally and U.S. tech stocks specifically have outperformed just about every other major market every year for the last decade and a half. Mm-hmm. This is a big deal. And it's funny how things work. Whenever everybody expects something to happen, that rarely materializes. And you can't blame investors for expecting U.S. stocks to outperform again in 2025. And guess what? We've seen Europe and parts of emerging markets outperform so far this year. Now, if you look at history beyond the last 15 years, you will find many periods during which ex-U.S. stocks outperform U.S. stocks. Is this the trend of the start of a new trend? It's impossible to know for sure, but we shouldn't have a failure of imagination.
Wouldn't you say it's even, impossible is a big word. I also feel that as we sit here, you and I, there are a lot of uncertainties that are happening from Washington, D.C. to the rest of the world. You know, obviously everybody knows that there are tariffs, potential tariffs. Who knows what they'll actually end up being? A lot of concessions being talked about and made. The uncertainty component of the markets today, whether here in the U.S. or outside the U.S., that's a big factor, isn't it?
It is, but at the same time, there are a few things that you can hold on to as investors to try to project performance moving forward.
More tangibly, you mean?
Exactly.
Right.
The first one is valuations.
Right.
This is factual, not a lot of debate. We can conclude that U.S. stocks aren't cheap. They aren't extremely expensive either, but nobody is really saying today you're buying S&P 500 at inexpensive multiples. They're
right.
fairly expensive. And history shows that whenever you buy expensive, you may do well in the short term, but in the medium to long term, you're likely to receive mediocre returns. So that's one reality. The second one, Anthony, is the US dollar. The US dollar is also expensive. Mm-hmm. Take just about any metric out there and you'll see the US dollar trading at 30 years highs, right? Usually the dollar moves in long-term cycles and we think eventually the tide will turn. Finally, I will highlight there's a few trends out there that we think will dominate markets in the coming years. One is artificial intelligence.
Right.
The other one is power and resources. We call them transformational innovation opportunities, or trios. These are primarily in the US, but not only. There's many companies that are exposed to AI, power and resources outside of the United States.
Yeah, I'm trying to get used to all of the new acronyms. So transformational, what is it again? Trio. Innovation, opportunities.
There you go.
Okay, great. So speaking of that, one of the things that I think a lot of us are sort of getting our hands around now, artificial intelligence is a topic that we've been talking about for quite some time. Everybody here is mostly familiar with ChatGPT. If they'd never used it, they certainly heard about it. But then this DeepSeek comes out of China, and what we're hearing is that it's significantly easier to program it. It uses less energy. It's more cost efficient. There was even a Bloomberg article that said DeepSeek theoretical profit margins could be more than 5 times its cost. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and that's all happening in China. So with that leading position that China has with AI and now with DeepSeek, what kind of catalyst do you see for the investment landscape with all of that being part of the China story?
Absolutely. To be sure, I think the US still leads when it comes to AI, But the DeepSeek story was key to remind everybody that the US is not the only game in town.
Right.
Now, this has reawakened markets out of China, together with the fact that China's President Xi Jinping has developed somewhat warmer relationships with the private sector and tech specifically in recent days, right? And this is not only a China story, right? When you look at what's going on in Europe, we've seen lower probability of a protracted war out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. We've seen elections out of Germany leading an outcome that is pretty market-friendly. And this helps explain why both China and European stocks are up double digits so far this year, outperforming the US.
Right. Just really quickly, as just a bit of a tiny shift, but staying with China, I did see that President Xi is preparing an updated stimulus plan. They're getting ready for their Chinese National People's Congress, which happens every year. Is there any concern to you knowing that he wants to create another stimulus package to potential opportunities in the country?
We actually think China needs more stimulus.
So that's a good thing, you think?
We do think so. If you go back to September of 2024, we saw a pretty dramatic change in tone from authorities in favor of more proactive fiscal policy, more proactive monetary, regulatory policy. Delivery of this details around these pronouncements were missing. And so slowly but surely they're coming out, and the event in March that you rightly highlight is going to be a key signpost.
So lots to look forward to on that. Last question then, I guess, as investors are watching and people are looking at this as potential opportunities, you're looking at emerging market bonds offering something yields of somewhere between 6.5% to 7.5%, which seems like it's mostly in line with what we see on the US side, maybe even a little better. How do investors truly create a global portfolio between debt and equities? What's your recommendation there?
I think we need to remember that the debate of US, ex-US is usually centered around stocks, but it doesn't have to end there. And as a reminder, when you look at the performance of emerging market dollar-denominated bonds over the last 20 years, it is really an investment portfolio workhorse. The risk-adjusted returns of this asset class are really very good. So what we're arguing here is, when you build your fixed income portfolio, yes, you need treasuries, yes, you need investment-grade US corporate bonds, but you shouldn't forget about the rest of the world.
Right.
There's very good quality stuff out there when it comes to fixed income alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, a diversified portfolio, it never really goes out of style no matter what's happening. It seems like, and especially now, going back to what we said at the beginning with a lot of uncertainty, having that diversification in your portfolio is certainly a very smart thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alejo, thanks very much. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Alejo Cherwanko from the Chief Investment Office, and thank you all for joining us, as you always do. If you want more information on anything that Alejo and I were discussing today, you can visit all of the Chief Investment Office views at our Insights website. The web address is right there on your screen, ubs.com/views. Plus, you can follow UBS on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and also on Instagram. Check out our channel at UBS Trending. Lots of UBS Studios content there for you to take a look at. And as always, if you have any questions about what Alejo and I spoke about today, make sure that you are chatting with your financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We wish you a great rest of your day. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon.